Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to today's Insider session on presentation skills with Roger Grannis. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. The session will begin recording, and within a few days, you will receive an email with both the slides and the recording. You can ask questions using the Q&A box on your screen, and Roger will answer as many questions as he can during his presentation. My name is Michelle, and I oversee the education and professional certification products and services here at the iTook Computer Society. Our Insider session focuses on essential business skills designed to help you excel in your current role and support your career growth. Again, joining us today is Roger Grannis, a communications expert who helps technical professionals explain complex ideas with clarity and impact. With over 30 years of experience, including building a Garner's Sales Training Academy, he now leads the Grannis Group, working with organizations to boost revenues and engagement. Known for his energy and humor, he's a TEDx speaker and author of The Yellow Cake Principle. Roger, thank you for presenting today, and the floor is yours.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everybody around the globe. One of the things I love about talking to you all is you are all over the world. So welcome to Presentation Skills, 13 surefire ways to engage your audience. And this is going to be rapid fire, so buckle up. Here we go. First of all, I do want to find out, where are you? So please go to the polling question. Where are you? Are you in the Western US, Eastern US, Canada, Central or South America, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Asia Pacific, Africa, or other? Where are you, my friends? I know I had lots of you in Africa last time, which was very exciting for me. We had somebody overlooking the Rock of Gibraltar, which was pretty cool. Looks like everybody is in the Eastern US, or perhaps a bit bashful. All right. So thank you for sharing. And oh, here we go. We've got some in Eastern Europe. And yep, mostly Eastern US, small percentage in Eastern Europe and other. Interesting. If you could, as we go, for you other people, type in the Q&A when we get there. I'd love to know where you are. All right, so we're going to close that poll. I'm going to click on Q&A. If you've got questions as we go, please type those in. And again, if you clicked other, please just put in the Q&A, where are you? All right, we're going to continue on. And here's a question. Put this not in the chat, but in the Q&A. What is the most postcard-worthy landmark near your home? Again, last time somebody said, if I look out my kitchen window, I can see the Rock of Gibraltar, and I was just amazed by that. I guess for me, the most postcard-worthy landmark near me is the New York City skyline. It's about an hour south of me, more or less. So again, type in the Q&A, what's cool or near where you live? All right, so as you're doing that, I'm going to continue on because, again, we got lots to cover. We've got another question. And you know what? I'm gonna speed ahead because I see we're not typing a lot, and I want to keep this train moving. Let me ask you a rhetorical question, and I'll provide the answer. But think to yourself, why is it so hard to hold people's attention today when you are presenting? Here are the reasons that I have found. People are stressed out, super busy. We've all got competing priorities. So even as you listen to this webinar, I know you're thinking about your family, other work projects, your neighborhood, your house, other things that you've got, other pressing priorities. People are experiencing information overload. During sessions, it's easy to multitask. We're competing with the media. So I'm giving a webinar now, which is on a screen. Well, what else is on screens? Netflix, movies, TV shows, news. Those all have high production value and are designed to hold people's attention. People are also bored and fatigued. So this is the reality that we're facing. So one of the thing we're focusing on today is, how do we capture and hold people's attention so that they are engaged during our sessions, whether it's a presentation, a training, running a meeting. So let me begin with a quick story. So I grew up in the San Francisco area, and I was a Boy Scout. And when I was 11 years old, I went to my first Boy Scout award night. They call them Court of Honor. And as you can see, like in the picture, the scouts would come up, they'd get their merit badges, their rank advancement. Oftentimes, the parents would come up and stand behind them. And so I was a restless teenage boy with a short attention span. Right, 11, I wasn't even a teenager. I had a short attention span. And at about 8:30, I thought we were done. And then the scoutmaster stood up and said, "I'd now like to introduce our guest speaker." I thought, you have got to be kidding. It's Thursday night. I've got homework. I'm tired. I want to get out of here. But this speaker came up and he talked about something called Sea Lab, this vessel that would go under the water and do research. And I'm telling you what, next thing I knew, it was 9:15. He was mesmerizing. He captured and held the attention of 40 restless boys for 45 minutes. And I have spent my entire life trying to figure out, how did he do that? How did that guest speaker do that? And so I put on my thinking cap, thought over my 40 years since then, 40, actually more than 40 years, to be honest. And I said, what can I share with you all today, my engineering friends, on what you can do to capture and hold attention like that guest speaker did? So here they are, buckle up, 13 ways. Number one, identify your audience motivation. Why should they care what you have to say? What is the pain that you potentially can solve? What can you say that will help them gain? What will you help them do to relieve their burden? The better you zero in on that, the better you will be able to hold people's attention. Be sure you do that before the presentation. Now, I want to give you an example. A couple of months ago, my son sent me a YouTube link to a graduation speech given at MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Well, that's where a lot of the engineers folks go. And his name is Hank Green. And what he did was survey the audience before. And this was the most brilliant thing I've ever done. A high percentage of his talk wasn't him presenting his own thoughts. It was quoting people in the audience. He was actually calling them by name, having them raise their hand, and then he would deliver the lines, the content that those very students provided in the survey. It was absolute genius. I'd suggest, if you like this stuff, look it up. He's also got not only his speech, but a description of how he prepared for that speech. So okay, great. That's concept number one. Let's apply it to a scenario a few times as we go through our talk today. So I want you to imagine that we have to persuade our senior leadership team to migrate from local storage to cloud storage. Okay, pretty straightforward for computer folks like you. That's going to be our scenario. There's our senior leadership team. And what do they care about? Okay, they care about business things, reducing business risk, controlling costs, ensuring smooth operations. They don't care about all that tech talk and bits and bytes like RAID levels, rack space utilization, block versus object versus file storage. So strip that language out. You need to focus on what they care about and deliver in their language, addressing their pain points. Okay, that is number one. Let's move now to number two, because it's going to be rapid fire, baby. We got 13 to go, or 12 to go, 13 total. All right, you want to start with a hook. When people come into your meeting, whether it's online or in person, they're not thinking about you. You need to get their attention and start with a hook, like pulling a fire alarm. So start with a provocative question, a startling statistic, a business challenge that they care about, maybe a vision of tomorrow, a year from now. Imagine our storage problems have gone away. Maybe tell a story. Make sure it's relatable to them. Let me give you an example from my own world. So when I was in junior high school out there in the suburbs of San Francisco, I believe it was 8th grade, I took a science class, and the teacher said, your first assignment is to memorize the periodic table of elements. I had no interest in doing that because he didn't explain why. Okay. He didn't capture my attention. He didn't give a hook. If he had simply said, boys and girls, guess what? Everything on earth is made up of these essential elements. If you understand these elements and how they combine, you will understand how life works on earth. Wow! That is so cool. I would have gone home and started working, but he didn't. And so I think I got a D in the class, the only D I ever got, because I didn't care, because he did not sell me on listening. All right, let's apply it to our scenario. Remember, we're persuading our senior leadership team to move from local storage to cloud storage. Here's just one example of how we could open our talk to them. Last week, one corrupted file on our on-site system shut production down for 2 days, and we nearly lost a top customer because of it. Again, just one example, but you see, I'm giving a startling statistic that they care about. All right, let's summarize the hook. A hook is like a hooky low. Now, when I was in 4th grade, my Uncle Frank was working for IBM in Honolulu, Hawaii. And we went as a family to visit Uncle Frank for a couple of weeks. And I still remember a song that I heard on the radio. And it was called The Hooky Low. And here's how it went. Oh, we're going to a hooky low. A hooky hook, a hooky 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 low. Many years, decades later, I still remember that. So a hook is like a hooky low. What is a hooky low? It's when a team of villagers go out to the ocean to work together to capture fish. They lower a net into the water, put tea leaves as bait, and then when the fish come in, they lift the net up and bring them to shore. That is a hooky low. All right. Now, this is a couple of bonus techniques that I want to share. Okay. So what did I just do there? 3 things. I gave an analogy. A hook is like a hooky low. Secondly, that's kind of an odd, unusual factoid. Third, I used a prop, a Hawaiian lei that I happen to have up in the attic. And then fourth, I sang a song. So right there, I've shown you 4 different ways you can use to capture and hold attention. Add a little spice. Okay, it's a little corny, but you see how I broke the pattern and provided a couple more ways to hold attention. All right, let's go to number 3. Have a cohesive structure. Now, engineers love this. It's a framework so that the audience doesn't get lost. Those of you who perhaps go to church on Sundays or other houses of worship on other days of the week, many religions provide a key message. It's like an 8-minute talk, a homily, a sermon, what have you. Don't you love it when you actually pay attention to those? Many of those talks, make people go to sleep. One of the reasons is they don't have a cohesive structure. So here are 5 cohesive structures that you can use to structure your talk. One of the most powerful in the business world is problem, solution, value. Here is the problem we're facing in our business. Here is a proposed solution. Here is the value it will deliver to you as a business leader if we implement it. Another is a flow chart. Step 1, step 2, step 3, a process that we're going to go through to solve our problem or to teach you how to do a skill at work. Provide a case study, which is simply a look at another organization and what they did to solve the problem. Have 3 key points. I've talked about that in other presentations. There's something powerful about the number 3. So have 3 key points. One other structure is the past, present, and future. Here's where we've been. Here's where we are today. Here's where we'd like to go in the future. That technique is used a lot in political speeches. Somebody running for a senior office. All right. Here's an example of a cohesive structure. In high school, my auto mechanics teacher knew that cars were complex, um, uh, had a lot of complex concepts in them. So rather than say, learn about the car, he broke the car into components. He called them packages. And so we learned about the car in small, bite sized chunks called packages: carburetor, electrical, brakes, windshield wipers, tires, and so forth. So just one example from my life. All right, let's apply it to our scenario talking to the senior leadership team. Problem, solution, value. Here's the problem. Our on-site system failed. Our proposed solution: if we moved shared files to a cloud service, they will always be available, backed up, and secure. Notice the rhythm: available, backed up, secure. Feel the cadence: 1, 2, 3. It's rhythmic, and that helps people pay attention. The value: cloud storage avoids costly downtime, keeps work moving, and protects important documents. We'll see it. There it is again. 3 key benefits. Now, I know we engineers like to have a lot of benefits. Okay. Our goal is to get people to pay attention and say yes. So I encourage you to limit finding the top 3 in any case that you're working on. All right. Let's move now to number 4. Interact. Do what you can to avoid having your presentation being a monologue. Now, I encourage you to ask questions to avoid this webinar from being a monologue. We've also got a lot to cover, so there's not going to be a lot of interactivity in this, of course, unless you type a question in the question Q&A box. All right, here are some ways that you could interact with your audience during a presentation. Ask for a show of hands. How many of you have ever experienced downtime with our internal system? Ask a multiple choice question. You can make that funny. You could give, here's the question. Here are 4 possible answers. The 4th one can be a funny one. Call for examples or experiences. You could even plant that ahead of time. Pre-wire having somebody that's that you know will be brief and on target. Have them give an example or share their experience. That way, they're not listening to just you. You could have a pair and share. Halfway through, have people turn to their neighbor, find a pair, share one key idea they've learned or one challenge that they've had. Get them to interact a little bit. You can also stop and do a question and answer. Again, this handout will be available later because I know we're moving rapid fire, and there's some great reference material in here available to you afterwards. Michelle will be sending that. Here's an example of how we could use a quiz or a multiple choice question during our presentation in our sample scenario. When our internal storage system goes down, how much does 1 hour of lost productivity cost our organization? Any guesses? How many of you think it's 5,000? How many 15,000? So forth. People will guess. Some will be embarrassed to speak up. That's all right. But they will be in their own head thinking, which gets them to pay attention. Then you'll share the answer and then continue on with your presentation. All right, number 5, break the pattern. All right, so I live in Connecticut, which is a state just outside of New York City. And every year in July, our town puts on a giant fireworks show. And my family and I went to the giant fireworks show many years in a row. It was very interesting and exciting. Then one year, it was extremely boring. And I thought, am I getting old? Or was something different? And I'll tell you what, the person hitting the buttons for the fireworks was different. And here's what they did. Okay. This is what it had been in prior years. So let's see here. Yeah, moving left to right. Small fireworks, kind of an exciting one, big one, a little bit of small ones, small, medium, ended with a grand finale. You see how it built? The humps are not all the same. So that was the exciting years. All right. Here's what they did during the boring year. There was no variety. It was medium, 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 medium. Predictable is boring. So, all right, you've got to have a dramatic build in your talks. Now, here's another technique I use. Notice I moved away from PowerPoint and I moved to something else, right? Now, if I were in a classroom, I would have gone to a flip chart or a whiteboard, and I would have drawn these. So you in the audience are actually watching me draw as I describe. But we don't have that capability here, so I did it in advance. But just that variety of paper versus PowerPoint slide breaks things up and holds the audience attention. So how do you break the pattern? Change the pace, shift the format, move around in the room. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Use an unexpected element. Okay, did that with the Hawaiian lei, the paper, singing. Switch voices. Maybe play a video, play a song, have a second speaker come up. Variety is key because if they expect it, they go to sleep and ignore it. All right, number 6, find the odd or unusual. So a couple of weeks ago, I was telling Michelle this before our webinar began. My son is becoming a park ranger in Yellowstone National Park. I believe it was the first national park in the United States, hundreds of square miles out there in the western US. And as we drove across, so I drove out with him because he was moving there. And we had a truck that we had rented full of all of his furniture. And as we drove across South Dakota, which is a beautiful state, a lot of the same kind of scenery, there were signs that said, 200 miles to Wall, then 100 miles to Wall. This is a little town in South Dakota. So we went to Wall, and it was an odd, unusual place. I recommend going, but it stuck out because it was so different. I could spend an hour talking about it, but I'm not going to bore you with that. If you're driving across South Dakota, stop in Wall. It's not too far from Mount Rushmore, but it stood out because it was odd and unusual. All right, here's an exercise for you. I want you to take a look at these apples. One of the apples is different. See if you can, by a quick scan, find something odd or unusual about the one apple that's not like all the others. So what is the technique I'm using right now? I'm asking the audience to think and solve a puzzle. You are now, hopefully, more actively engaged because you're not listening to me. You're thinking, where is that thing? And some of you, I want to be the first. All right, I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to jump ahead. There it is. This one is missing part of the upper stem. So congratulations to any of you who found that. But again, there are two techniques in one. Find something odd or unusual and highlight that, and have the audience solve a problem. All right. Here's an example in our scenario where we are training, trying to persuade our senior leadership team. This is now me in as though I'm presenting to them. We pay $38,577 US per year to store a backup server that has not been used since 2019. It's in a locked room and no one can find the key. So, see, that's odd and usual. It's kind of amusing, but it also is shocking. So, we're shocking the audience to pay attention and giving them a little dose of humor. No one can find the key. And they're like, oh, dear God, good grief. We've got to get that fixed. All right, number 6, tell a story. I've talked about this in many talks. Stories are the most powerful form of human communication. Incorporate a story into your talk because data tells, but stories sell. I've used stories already in this talk. The keynote speaker at MIT, story about the C-Lab speaker, and the fireworks display in my town. All right, let's apply this. Again, this is talking to our senior leadership team, so I might insert this into the talk. Here's an example of what I'm now in role. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Sarah is our sales rep in New York City. She was on a sales call last week. During the call, she pulled up the latest pricing model on her laptop, showed it to the customer, and they said, "That's not what your team sent yesterday. They sent this." Oh my goodness, different pricing model. Turns out we have 3 different pricing models. One is on a shared drive, one is in the sales database, and one is in somebody's personal folder. That's an example of the problem that we can solve when we move to cloud computing for storage. Make sense? Again, quick example. All right, number 7, especially for we engineers, we love data, statistics. We need to bring it to life. Don't leave it up to the audience to interpret your data. Guide them to your key point. So show it, don't state it. Use visuals, not raw numbers. Translate the metrics into meaning. Explain what the data means. Again, one key point per slide. This data means this. Don't go into long, endless interpretation that is going to put the audience to sleep. One data point, one meaning. Highlight the key point. Emphasize that one thing. Use relatable and analogies. This is the size of that. Okay? Bring it to life. Reveal the storyline. Perhaps show a trend. I suspect you're using data models like this, before and after comparisons. So again, don't just verbalize it. Create a visual that shows the audience that key point and makes it easy to grasp. Number 8, keep slides simple. Okay, we want to move away from slides filled with words. I've done a couple of other presentations on this that are in the library. I urge you to look at those. And I go into this in a lot more detail. But we don't want that image that we see over on the right. Where you're basically writing your script on the slide. You want to have a visual and some bullets. Make sense? Okay, there we go. And I'm going to pause to see if we have any questions. I know I said we'd go fast, and I'm going faster than I thought I would go. So I'm going to pause. Any feedback so far? Anything you've learned? Any questions? One key thing that you'll be taking away? I'm going to pause for a minute. Michelle, any questions coming in? Doesn't look like it. All right. Okay. Let's move now to number 9. Have lots of variety. Monotony causes boredom. So here are some ways that you can provide some variety in your presentations. One is physical. So move around. I was at a conference giving a breakout session out in Iowa, state in the US, about 6 weeks ago. And I went to see some of the other speakers. And one of the other speakers was brand new. First time speaking as a breakout speaker. Nice guy, had great content. That said, he stood in the front corner, almost behind a pillar the whole time. He was using the pillar as a security blanket. Now, at full disclosure, I have done that myself, and somebody gave me feedback saying, Roger, you need to move away from the pillar and get out at least in the center of the room and move around. So perhaps you want to make the first point from the left side of the room. As you shift to making the second key point, move over to the right of the room. Then as you move to your third key point, anchor yourself in the middle of the room. That way, the audience visually sees that you're shifting from point one to point two to point three. One of the other techniques that took me a long time to feel comfortable is walking out into the audience. Let's say you're moving into a question and answer session and say, let me pause to see who's got a question. And then walk into the audience, walk halfway down the aisle. Maybe look somebody in the eye and say, I see something percolating, a thought forming in your head. What's on your mind? What question might you have? Put it to them. You're giving them permission to speak up. You can also vary your gestures and vary your facial expression. All right, how about from a verbal standpoint? You can change up the pace, move faster, move slower. You can vary your volume, talk a little bit louder, go a little bit softer. Use strategic pauses. Some of the best speakers I've seen have long pauses. For example, when you're saying, who has a question? Give a long pause. I know we might be nervous up at the front of the room, but you're giving people a chance to relax, to think, to get over their own fear of raising their hand and asking a question. Shift your tone and energy. All right, there are some examples. All right, number 10 is to simplify. I love this quote by Alfred Hitchcock, a famous film director, who said, drama is life with the dull bits cut out. So you create more impact as a speaker, not by packing in more and more information, but by brainstorming all that information, starting with that long list, and then pulling out the content that is irrelevant or non-essential to making your key point. There's an old saying in the sculpture world, when somebody, Michelangelo, starts with a block of marble, and they ask him, how did you find the masterpiece within there? He said, I just cut everything out that wasn't part of the main sculpture. That's what you want to do in speaking. Don't pack more in, remove non-essential content. Here's another quote similar to that. This is by the author of a book called The Little Prince. And he says, perfection is not achieved, not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. Preparation is key. So pulling out an old PowerPoint the night before and dusting it off, that PowerPoint might have been for a different audience than who you're delivering to the next time. So you want to slant it to the next audience, customize it, and make sure your content is relevant to them as well. Remove non-essentials. Use plain language. Simplify your visuals, and make sure you keep it audience focused. Again, who is that specific audience? Go back to rule number one. What is important to them? What do they care about? And put in the preparation time. I ran sales training for many years, and the rule of thumb for creating a workshop is, get this, for every hour of classroom time, The instructor should put in 100 hours of prep time. That's the whole concept of whittling down the content and making it relevant and easy to understand and interactive for the audience. Number 11, begin a work. Okay, I'm going to give a couple of examples of if you are running a workshop. So here's a simple formula for opening a workshop. Number one, we want to introduce you. Who are you? Your credentials that relate to the audience. You want to build yourself up in the eyes of the audience. Better yet, have somebody else introduce you, much like Michelle introduced me today. That way, you're not bragging about yourself. Somebody else is speaking about your credentials. And this is number one. And I see this skipped all the time. Typically, what I see is walk in the classroom and start the content. We have skipped that point, like in my 8th grade science class. Why are we here? Why is it important to learn the periodic table? You want to sell the audience on listening. Then talk about what you're going to cover. Begin with an icebreaker. That's an activity that gets the participants to loosen up, maybe share with each other, write down why they're there, what's the challenge they want to overcome by learning your content. And then have participants weigh in, have them identify their personal goals, and then have them share those perhaps with the group. You could write those on the flip chart. That way they're buying into the workshop and becoming motivated to be there for what you have to say. Okay. Let's see, where is our next slide? There we go. All right, here are some ways to interact during a workshop. You could do a pair and share, which we talked about. Midway through the training, I'd like you to turn to your neighbor and share one new idea that you're going to implement into your job over the next week. Number two, you could have small groups analyze a challenge. So give them a case study. Imagine it's this scenario and you've got to solve it. Work in a small group to figure out how to do that, and then come back and report your best 1 or 2 ideas. You can do role plays, do a skill practice. You can have quizzes throughout the workshop. Just a simple multiple choice. Maybe it's a worksheet. You could have the small groups work on those together, so they're answering questions together. You can have them do micro projects. Small groups can analyze a challenge and then present their solutions to the larger group. You can have people compete for prizes, right? Each small group gets up and presents their idea. A panel of judges comes in and listens to those and then votes on who the winners are. Have some small fun prizes. All right, number 13 is be you. There's only one you. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got is don't put on an act. Don't try to be somebody else. You're there to connect. People want to hear what you have to say, your advice based on your experience. What are you recommending? So be you, but be you amplified. Just dial it up a little bit. Here in the US, one of our presidents many years ago was Ronald Reagan. And before every speech, he ate a chocolate chip cookie. It gave him a little boost of sugar, a little boost of energy that helped him be himself, but amplified. We want to hear your stories, not someone else's. When you're up there to speak, people are looking, again, your experience, your knowledge, your recommendation. Confidence comes from being genuine. People in the audience know when you are in alignment with who you really are, and so confidence comes from being yourself. And I encourage you to give it your all. Again, preparation time is key. Knowing your audience and making sure all of your content is audience focused, helping them address the issues that are pressing to them. Boy, gosh, I went pretty fast in this presentation. We have a little bit more time, and there we have it. But I'm available for questions. And let me just say, by wrapping up, just in time for the holidays, uh, I spent a lot of time consolidating my knowledge from the last 30 plus years on influence, persuasion, and sales. It's all summarized in this book available on Amazon called The Yellow Cake Principle. Simple, easy to digest, very comprehensive. Encourage you to take a look at it if you're interested. And I would love to connect. You can reach me at LinkedIn, Roger Grannis. I give speeches, workshops, and projects. A little QR code might make it easier for you to find me. Anyway, I appreciate you listening. I hope that wasn't too fast, but I did really think long and hard about all those ways that I observed that speaker many years ago capture and hold attention. And as a reference guide, Michelle will be sending you the PowerPoint slides from today's presentation. So thank you. Again, love to hear any questions you might have on this or other communication skills challenge that you might have an interest in discussing.
Hi, Roger. I guess we could wait like a minute to see if there's any questions. If not, we
Absolutely.
wrap it up.
Sure.
Great, sounds good.
And if you from another part of the world are still on, I'd love to see where you are or any postcard views you're seeing outside the window today. Again, I was just in awe of that uh, North African participant last time who sat at my window and see the Rock of Gibraltar.
That's awesome. I don't see any questions. I guess we can wrap it up, Roger, if you're okay with
Okay,
that. Okay,
perfect.
great. I just wanted to say again, thank you, Roger, for presenting today. It's very informative. And thank you to our audience. Again, just like Roger mentioned, you will be receiving an email to both the slides and this recording of the webinar. Thank you again, and I hope everyone has a great day.